Hello, welcome to our lecture on the family defined. Let me just start it here, sorry. So the family defined, what is family? Well, not long ago in the United States and many other parts of the world, the family was defined as a mother, a father, and children all living under one roof and related through blood. The mother stayed home to raise the children and to keep the house while the father went off to be the breadwinner. This type of family is now commonly referred to as traditional family. The Webster Dictionary has multiple definitions of family, from a group of people who are related to each other to the basic unit in society, traditionally consisting of two parents rearing their children, and also any of various social units differing from but regarded as equivalent to a traditional family. But we all know what was once considered family has grown and stretched and evolved significantly over the years, to a point where many, if not most of the families today, look very different from the families of yesterday. So in the 50s again, or I'm going to say in the 60s, at the height of post-World War II baby boomers, families did look like the traditional, 88%. Now in 2016, we're down to 69%. Even more significant, I think, is the fact of single mothers. They have tripled since the 60s. Only 8% of families were headed by single mothers. Now that's up to 23%. 31% of children experience a major change. So what we're talking about there is there's this fluidity in family arrangements, non-marital habitat, and divorce, along with the prevalence of remarriage and non-marital recoupling in the U.S., making for family structure in many cases continue to evolve during a children's life. While in the past, a child born to a married couple, as most children were in the past, were very likely to grow up in a home with those two parents, as we've said. This is much less common today. As children's living arrangement changes, we know more than 50% of marriages end up in divorce. For example, one study found that over a 3-year period, about 3 in 10 children younger than 6 had experienced a major change in their family or household structure in the form of divorce, separation, marriage, or parents living with somebody outside of marriage, or even death. So ethnicity does play a part of it. The majority of white, Hispanic, and Asian children are living in two-parent households, while less than half of Black children are living in this type of arrangement. Furthermore, at least half of Asian and white children are living with two parents, both in their first marriage. The shares of Hispanic and Black children living with two parents in their first marriage are much lower. I'm not going to break it down. I don't think it matters that much percentage-wise. Blended families. This is the old, it is the Partridge Family, isn't it? That's what they were called. 16% of children live in blended families. My family was a blended family. This share, though, has remained stable since the 1990s, when reliable data first became available. At that time, 15% of kids were in blended family households. All told, about 8 are living with a step-parent and 12 are living with step-siblings or half-siblings. 6 in 10, or 63% of women in remarriages are in blended families, and about half of these remarriages involve stepchildren who live with the remarried couple. And the percentage of blended families is consistent among ethnicities. There's no difference. Shrinking families. In 1909, the government began keeping track of what's called the fertility rate. The general fertility rate is the number of births out of 1,000 women between the ages of 15 and 44. In the first 3 months of 2016, the fertility rate in the U.S. fell to the lowest level. The rate was 59.8 births per 1,000 women. The first quarter of 2015 had seen similarly low rates at 60 births per 1,000 women. The U.S. fertility rate has been in a decline, a steady decline, since World War II baby boomers. Back in 1957, the fertility rate was 122.9 births per 1,000 women. Family sizes vary between races and ethnicities. Asian moms have the lowest number of children, and Hispanic moms have the highest. About 27% of Asian mothers and 1/3 of white mothers near the end of their childbearing years have had 3 or more children. Among Black mothers at the end of their childbearing years, 4 in 10 have had 3 or more children, and fully half of Hispanic mothers have had that many. Moms also seem to be having children with more partners. Estimates of this is about 20%. I've just read an interesting article that middle children are becoming extinct because parents are having such few children that there's no 3rd child. Whoops, education, older and better educated parents. While parents today are far less likely to be married than they were in the past, they are more likely to be older and also to be more educated. In 1970, the average new mother was 21 years old. Since that time, that age has risen to 26 years. The rise in maternal age has been driven largely by declines in teen births. Today, 7% of all births occur to women under the age of 20. As recently as 1990, the share was almost twice as high, or 13%. While age at birth has increased across all major races and ethnic groups, substantial variation still persists. The average first-time mom among whites is 27 years old. The average age at first births among Blacks and Hispanics is 24 years old. And part of this is the prevalence of teen pregnancy in this group. Just 5% of births to whites takes place before the age of 20, while this share below the age of 20 reaches to 11% in non-Hispanic Blacks and 10% for Hispanics. Mothers today are also far better educated than they were in the past. While in 1960, just 8% of mothers with infants at home had any college experience, today that share stands to 67%. That's up from, as I said, 18%. A gap exists with different levels of education despite recent increase in the fertility of highly educated women. For example, just 20% of mothers ages 40 to 44 with post-grad degrees, such as master's or doctorates, have born 3 or more children, as have 32% of those with bachelor's degree. Among mothers in the same age group with a high school diploma, 38% have had 3 or more kids, while among moms who lack a high school diploma, the majority, 55%, have 3 or more children. So what I just said is the less education, the more children you have. I think I missed one. I guess not. Okay, women in the workforce. Obviously, that has been increasing over the last century. The increase in labor force is continuing. In 1975, the first data in which labor force participation of mothers is available, less than half the mothers, 47%, with children younger than 18 were in the labor force, and about a third of those with children younger than 3% were working outside the home. Those mothers have changed rapidly. Now, among mothers with children younger than 18, blacks are most likely to be in the labor force, about 3/4 of them. In comparison, this share is 70% among white mothers. Some 64% of Asian mothers and 62% of Hispanic mothers are in the workforce. The relatively high proportion of immigrants in these groups is likely to contribute to the lower workforce involvement. Foreign-born moms are much less likely to be working than their U.S.-born counterparts. And the more education a mother has, the more likely she is to be in the labor force. About half, 49% of moms who lack a high school diploma are working. This share jumps to 65% for those with a high school diploma, and fully 75% of mothers with some college are working, and 79% of those with a college degree or more. Breadwinning moms. Along with their movement into the labor force, moms, even more than men, have been attaining higher and higher levels of education. In fact, among married couples today, it is more common for the wife to have more education than the husband, which is obviously a reversal of previous patterns. These changes, along with the increasing share of single-parent families, mean that more than ever, mothers are playing the role of breadwinner, often the primary breadwinner. Breadwinner moms are particularly common in Black families, spurred by very high rates of single motherhood. About 3/4, 74% of Black moms are breadwinner moms. Most are unmarried or living apart from their spouse, that's 61%. And also, let's see if I can find and the remainder, 13%, earn more than their spouse. Among Hispanic moms, 44% are the primary breadwinners and 31% are unmarried. The flip side of the movement of mothers into the labor force has been a dramatic decline in the share of mothers who now stay at home. Some 29% of mothers living with children younger than 18 are at home with their children. This marks a modest increase since 1999, when 23% of moms were at home with their children, but a long-term decline of about 20% points since the 60s. While the image of stay-at-home moms may conjure images of Leave It to Beaver or the highly affluent opt-out mom, the reality of stay-at-home motherhood today is quite different for a large share of families. In roughly 3 in 10 stay-at-home moms, either the father is not working or the mother is single and living with somebody else. As such, stay-at-home moms are generally less well off than working moms in terms of education and income. Some 49% of stay-at-home moms have at least a high school diploma, compared with 30% of working moms. The median household incomes for families with a stay-at-home mom and a full working dad was 55% in 2014. Roughly half of the median income from families in which both parents work. That was $102,000. Here's the good news. With a complicated fabric of changing families as a backdrop, the new Pew Research Center survey provides insight into how today's parents are raising their children and laying the groundwork for their futures. Most parents say they are doing a good job raising their children, but some clearly face more challenges than others. Financial stress can affect parents' overall sense of well-being and their assessment of how they're doing, and even the extent to which they feel supported in their parenting efforts by family and friends. Overall, the majority of U.S. parents say that being a mother or father is enjoyable, rewarding, and an important part of their overall identity. Most are satisfied with the amount of time they spend with their children, but at the same time, sizable minorities say they always feel rushed in their daily lives, and most say they find parenting tiring and stressful at least some of the times. The varying quality of neighborhoods is an important variable in a child's life. Where the child is raised matters. A neighborhood can determine what schools children attend, who their friends are, and what they can do in their free time. Most U.S. parents say their neighborhood is excellent or very good place to raise children. One in five say their neighborhood is a good place, and 18% describe their neighborhood as fair or poor. Making ends meet. 1/3 of parents say they live comfortably. Roughly the same share, 32%, say they are able to meet their basic expenses with little left over for extras. Household financial circumstances differ remarkably by family type. Among married parents, 1 in 4, or 39%, say they live comfortably. Significantly smaller shares of parents who are living with a partner or have no spouse say they live comfortably. Financial well-being seems to be directly linked to whether or not parents think they are doing a good job. These ratings are not strongly linked to parents' income or the education. Relatively few say they are doing fair or poor job. For the vast majority of parents, being a mother or father is an important part of their overall identity, as I said before. Being a mother or father is an equally important part of parents' identity, regardless of the age of their children. Whether their youngest child is a preschooler or a teenager, parents are about equally likely to say being a parent is extremely important to their identity. Mothers more than fathers find being parents tiring. I find that a little interesting. Parental advice. This is from the Pew Foundation. You should put your partners first, allow for some time with your partners, date nights, just being together. There are significant gaps between mothers and fathers when it comes to seeking advice from families and friends. Mothers are much more likely than fathers to say they often turn to family members other than their spouse or partner for advice about parenting. Roughly a third of mothers say they often rely on family members for advice, while only 19% of fathers say they do the same. 44% of dads say they rarely or never get advice from family members. Relatively few parents rely on outside resources rather than people. Fewer than 1 in 10 say they turn to parenting websites or magazines. Even fewer say they regularly rely on online message boards. That actually surprises me. So there you go. Now, Onondaga County, this is our very last slide, so hang in there. I want to just talk about Onondaga County since this is where we live. Across the state, more of those students earned a diploma this year than the 2014 graduating class. The average graduation rates for 2016 increased to 81%, up 3 percentage points from the year before. The rates improved in the inner city. For the first time in 8 years, the Syracuse School District had a graduation rate of 55%. Let me break that down by ethnicity. 88% of whites graduated, 75% of Asians, 67% of blacks or African Americans, and 59% of Hispanic or Latino. And the lowest group was the American Indians, which was 55%. Community health is family health. The infant mortality rate is 5.5 per 1,000 live births. It's pretty poor in Syracuse. A substantial racial disparity exists between black and white residents, with infant mortality rates of 4.3 per 1,000 and 12.4 per 1,000 respectively. So in other words, there are more black infants dying. In Onondaga County, 7.6 of residents ages 65 years and older live in poverty, as do 17.4% of seniors in Syracuse. The poverty burden in an area can be assessed through utilization of public benefits. Almost 23,000 households received SNAP or Supplementary Nutrition Assistance programs. The Special Supplementary Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, or WIC, in Onondaga County is an average of over 10,000 participants per month. This is not good. Thank you for listening to this lecture. I know it was a bit longer than usual, and I appreciate it all. Thank you.